Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Munnawar Hashim, and I am a developer advocate at LaunchDarkly. Before we start, I just want to say I recently had the flu, and I still have the cough. So if you hear me hacking away at stage, forgive me for that in advance. So today, we're just talking about, I want to talk about safely deploying software and how speed doesn't need to be sacrificed whilst you're deploying your software. When you're delivering fast, it doesn't necessarily compromise the safety or quality of your releases. And the clicker works. That's great. Okay. So, if you remember learning how to ride a bike, I know for a lot of you it was a long time ago. For me, it was not that long. I learned super late to ride a bike. And it's counterintuitive when someone says to you, move faster, you'll be safe. Because just before learning to ride a bike, maybe you learn how to run, and the faster you move, the chance of you falling over increases dramatically. So when your friend or your parent says, just move faster, you react out of fear, the fear of falling. And that's not an irrational fear. It's very rational. Falling down sucks, it really hurts. But when you start to get it in the bicycle, you pedal to avoid that fear of falling. And again, it's a rational fear, the fear of falling. So, before I jump into safety and speed, I want to start off with a big question. Why do we test changes? For many people, this is quite an obvious question. It's usually something that we spend a lot of time and effort and energy in software development. We spin up loads of environments, we do code freezes, we might release different versions. We have whole entire release management teams that are dependent on these processes. So why do we do it? Why do we test? The first major reason, obviously, is the fear of failure. People are scared of failure. When I was a kid, when I was a lot younger, I was scared of two things. One, failing at school, failing at whatever it is. And two, I was terrified of my mother. Now that I'm a lot older, I'm scared of two new things. And that first thing, it's still fear of failing, but now it's fear of failing at my job or in my relationships or letting people down. And the second thing is, I'm still shook of my mum, actually. She's a terrifying woman. So the fear of failure is big with software development teams as well. Where you're riding a bike, it's a fear of falling. With us, it's a fear of failure. And that's for good reason. A botched release can impact customers. If you mess up a release and it impacts customers a lot, brings one of their systems down, makes them lose money, in the end, you will end up losing money. It's a very costly outage because it may impact your reputation. Hey, you're not the safe company that we thought you were because this release was terrible. It messed up our systems. Or over time, the reputation of your company and your product starts to go down, and your customers may begin to jump ship. There's a second fear that we all have, which is the fear of becoming stagnant. Innovation is something that customers who are releasing their own products may use tools to keep them on the cutting edge. We're in tech, we want to be on the cutting edge. But when you release something innovative, innovation, by its very definition, can't stay very fresh for very long. So if you don't innovate, and I'm going to play this video actually because it's a great little, if I can find my mouse. Okay, yes. Okay. I always try and sneak like a Simpsons reference into all my slideshows. I'm going to mute that. Okay. So if you don't innovate, your competitors will. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens bit by bit, bite by bite. Eventually, you will lose market share to your more agile, nimble, more innovative competitors. And that's scary for a lot of people. It's how we've always done it. This is the final thing that we hear quite often, and this surprises me. So I used to be a teacher, and you hear this a lot. As a teacher, we are terrified of change. Changing things in the classroom it's pulling teeth. It's awful. So when I moved to tech, I thought, great, I'm going to be hearing this a lot less. And whilst I still do hear it less, I'm surprised at how often I come up with, well, that's how we've always done things. We are a field of groundbreakers, of people who are, disrupting markets, the Ubers of the world. But yet we still kind of fall back on this, how we've always done things. And that's fine. It's not wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just one of those things that is another fear. Like we've always tested like this for such a long time because there wasn't a technology that allowed us to hide features in production and test live. With feature management software, we're able to test live in prod, dark launch features, and choose when they go live and to whom they go live to. Before we move on, I want to reiterate that testing is a good thing. Please don't take away from this that testing is bad and you go home after this and start releasing things into prod for jokes without testing, and your managers come to you and say, why did you do that? And you're like, well, Munnawar said it was fine. It was okay. He said only scrubs test. I'm not saying that. Do test. It's just about striking that balance. If you test too much, you stutter your releases, which means that you have a longer, slower release cycle. If you test too little, well, the issues that we had earlier start to crop up. So it's just about striking that balance. There's also this kind of misconception that a lot of people have. If you want to be really safe, you must move slow. But moving slow does not necessarily mean that you deploy safely. Ultimately, it kind of does, but you end up moving a lot slower than is ideal. So how about we change our mindset? Safety is shipping frequently, but with greater control. By controlling your release, you can manage the experience of people consuming your product. And once you do that, you can really speed up. And so on this slide here, on the right-hand side, we have things that allow you to move faster, and on the left-hand side, we have things that allow you to move safely. And using a feature management tool like LaunchDarkly allows you to bridge the gap between fast and safe. For example, our first point here is being able to ship faster, to remediate any issues that might have come across, anything that might break. If you ship really fast, you might get shook. You're like, oh no, things are going to break. But at least on this side, if you do have a problematic release, you need something like a kill switch, something that allows you to roll back really quick. And I'm going to show you a very quick video. Okay, great. So, imagine this is my new feature, okay? So there's two types of developers you have in the world. There's really, really, really good developers, and then there's me, right? So this is our kill switch. When I turn it on, and I cross my fingers, and I cross my toes, we've all been there, we're about to ship something into prod, and we hope nothing breaks. So we cross all of our fingers and toes, and we hope nothing breaks, and then we turn things on, and then boom, it breaks. Everything's on fire. We've taken down prod. And instead of freaking out, losing our minds, thinking like, oh my goodness, am I going to have to look for a new job? Actually, I can just roll it back and turn it off. And everything will go back to how it once was. And that's safe. Before using a tool like this, shipping into prod was very stressful. Extremely stressful. I had no hair. I was bald. I was losing my mind. And now with things like LaunchDarkly, I'm very calm and quite relaxed actually. So here we have our fire comment, and we can just validate that before hitting save. And then I'll go back to the next one. Great. The second point here is just moving away from waterfall releases. And once we do that, we can use trunk-based development, which means that instead of committing to your own branches in a silo and passing things off to the next person, what we have is the ability to work in tandem with your teammates by committing to the same code base to the trunk. And the way in which we can ensure that things are safe is we essentially can put our flags, we can put our code behind feature flags, so other people who we might be working with in different time zones are able to enable our features, see if it works, or if it sucks. If someone's in Australia, they can turn it on, see it breaks things, turn it off, and say, hey, Munnawar, do the right thing, work on this. And I can wake up to that Slack message and just get to work. And they have control, if they have the right permissions, over my features. You're also able to choose who you can target. I can target people in London with my new feature. I can target people who are over the age of 30. Or I can target people who use Android devices. Or for jokes, I can target 30% of people who live in London who have Android devices and are over the age of 30. Because, as we all know, Londoners are quite cantankerous, picky people. You don't want to change things too quickly. God forbid you change something on the tube for someone. It's just an angry experience. So I'm going to show you a quick demo of how that looks in LaunchDarkly. If I can just, yes, sweet. Boom. All right. So here we have our, if the age is over 30, if the city is England, no, it should be London, and the device is an Android, let's roll out maybe 30% of our feature to 30% of people who fit this criteria, and I can roll it out. And if it's a really successful rollout, great, I can roll out to 40% of people, 50% of people, 60% of people, and then everyone. And by doing this, you ensure that your rollout is safe, is approved of, because you can gather metrics to see if people like it or not, or if it sucks, and you can just roll it back and pretend it never happened. And the final point is, you get to collaborate across projects, and this is pretty huge. You're able to collaborate with environments, but also using our feature management tool with tools that you might love and use yourself. We have great integrations with other companies' tools that ensures that you don't need to access our dashboard in order to use LaunchDarkly. And I'm going to show you a quick demo showing our integration with Datadog. So we have 3 integrations with Datadog, and I'm going to hit play again and hope I can find my mouse. Yes, let's go. All right. So we have 3 integrations with Datadog here. In the middle, this is our API service dashboard. In the middle, we have a graph. And this graph basically shows the HTTP status requests that are shown to our users. The 200s are shown here. We're doing a pretty good job. And the 500s are over here, where it's quite low, but not good enough. Again, this is not real data. This is LaunchDarkly has a lot more 200s and far fewer 500s. This is fake data that I made up for jokes. Now, on the right-hand side, you see these red lines. These correspond with changes that have been made in a LaunchDarkly environment. Whenever those changes happen, they're surfaced on Datadog using our events integration. And here you can see Munnawar turned off a flag. Great, whatever. Now, these are when changes have been made. At some point, let's have an example situation. It's 4:59 p.m. All right, so I've just turned on that flag. It's 4:59, and I've left the office. And when I've done that, what's happened is I'm underground, and these 500s have spiked, which is obviously not good news. I could turn that off if I wasn't on the underground, but since I am, so what ends up happening is with the integration, our flag triggers integration, Datadog automatically turned off this feature flag. And here you can see that Datadog, I've set up a trigger that meant that once the 500s went past a certain amount, Datadog automatically turned that off. And this is great for DevOps teams or people who want to automate the release of their features. And so, yeah, that's essentially like just one of the many integrations that we have. I'm going to go to our next slide. Yeah, here are the integrations we offer for many, many tools. And each of them does something different. kind of like depending on the tool that it is. So for Slack, you can have approvals that go off if someone's made a change to a feature flag and that person's name is Munnawar. You definitely want to have managers and other people ensuring that they review the changes I make. And they get pinged on Slack saying, Munnawar's trying to make a change. So they say, yes, great, or no, don't do that, please. And we also offer SDKs in numerous different languages, both front end and back end. I used to say that we offer languages in nearly every language out there, but there's always that one person who rocks up to the booth and is like, yeah, I made a language last night. Do you have that one? And I'm like, no, dude, of course not. We just have Ruby. No, but we actually do have quite extensive SDK coverage. So moving back to speed and changing. This is not that comfortable. Come on. There we go. All right. Yeah, instead of making like few huge changes, which are quite slow and quite big impacts, you can move faster by making a lot of smaller changes. So I don't know if many of you were in the talk of, where is it? Oh, yeah, Randy Shoup. Randy Shoup, who is here today, he works for eBay. He did a talk on the way that they changed their background back in the day. And so I'm going to give you a quick TLDR about like what that story is essentially. So back in the old days, like eBay's been around for ages. So in the old days of the internet, we had internet sites that looked like garbage. They were just flashing pop-ups, buttons that said "click me," GeoCities like tagged everywhere. And at that time, eBay used a bright yellow, loud background for their website. And no one here from eBay, right? No, it was ugly. It was hideous. And so what they decided to do when they saw a lot of people maturing and a lot of websites going kind of more professional, they're like, we're going to change that hideous yellow background and make it white. And so they did that thinking, yes, we're embracing Web 2.0, let's go. And their customers were absolutely outraged. The next day, the customers were like, hashtag this is not my eBay, what's going on? You've changed this, typed away so many angry emails. And the eBay team were like, oh, sugar, we need to change this back because we don't want to piss off our customers. So they ended up reverting this massive change and changing it back from professional white back to a hideous, loud yellow. But they really wanted to make that change. They were married to the idea of making this change, but they didn't want to annoy their customers. So what they did, instead of making one massive change, they made a lot of tiny changes. So over the course of 6 to 9 months, they would change the background every single day from really obnoxious yellow to ever so slightly less obnoxious yellow day by day. And each day, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But by the end of the 6 to 9 months, that background was white. And no one complained about it. So this is kind of the mindset that we're talking about here. This idea as well, deployment and release. A lot of people kind of have this idea that deployment and release are synonymous with each other. At LaunchDarkly in our offices, we like to really put a clear boundary between these two. Deployment is just pushing out code, which can be done weekly, even daily. Small incremental changes that happen over time. Releases are those things that companies like to put on websites and tell people about and spam you with newsletters saying, yo, this next release is going to blow your minds. Seldom does it do that, but these are the big things that people like to talk about. And so for us, what we do with our releases is we just wrap them in feature flags. And when it's time, the person who's in charge, may not even be a developer, can just go into the correct environment and just switch it on and see what happens. And again, you can enable it just for yourself, just for a friend in the company, your QA team, everyone internally, or 100% of your users around the world. I love this diagram. This is essentially the loop that we use that shows like how we control our releases. So we start off with is this a wall? Yeah, great. We start off with a new feature, and then we release it just to internal users. And they say, wow, Munnawar, that's an amazing feature. Great. So then I release it beyond LaunchDarkly. And I maybe send it out to 10 to 20% of Londoners. And like I said earlier, Londoners are very picky people. And we're like, yo, Munny, that sucks. And so I roll it straight back here. Or if they don't, maybe I roll out to 30% of users, 100% of users. And then I iterate on it slowly until we work on to the next feature. And all of this is happening weekly, monthly. It just happens so quick. And what impact does this have on the culture in a company? We have a blameless culture in the company I currently work for, and a lot of companies have really started moving towards this, especially post-COVID. But some companies say they're blameless, but aren't actually. Mistakes happen. That's fine. If you end up bringing down prod and you have a feature flag, it's only down for a second before you realize, and you can just turn it straight back off. But if you bring it down and there's no kill switch, it's very hard to maintain that blameless culture. And unfortunately, I've seen some people who think they've joined a blameless company, and then they do something quite horrific, and then end up on Twitter being all like, yo, looking for a job, don't ask me why. Also, don't go to that website, it no longer exists. So we have the guardrails in place, so you can mess up, and that's okay. It's safe to mess up. We're also making a lot smaller changes. So any changes that are made, if you make it and it doesn't quite work out, that's cool, that's fine. Also, it's stress-free. Like I said, stress-free developers are happy developers, and they end up performing usually better. So, ship smaller changes more often. You're able to course correct. And importantly, at the end there, you should be able to understand and evaluate your successful releases. This is key. So there's a team at Microsoft who said, essentially, their code doesn't count as finished until it's been tested, released, in production, and returning metrics. And I love that. Your code isn't finished when it's tested, nor is it finished when it's in prod. It's not even finished when your users are using it. If you don't know what impact your release has had, well, it's not done. So you should use an experimentation or a metrics gathering product to tell you exactly what your release has done. LD offers that. We have experimentation, but it's just part of it. It's really important that you know why you're making these changes, and you can justify not just to your team, but to investors or managers or your customers why this change has been made. I have worked for managers in the past who make a change based on gut feeling, just based on that instinct, and they're like, trust me, this will work. I don't know why I'm putting an American accent on. I'm not saying this is stuff that Americans do. I'm just saying in general, we have this overconfidence that is not usually backed up with stats. And having metrics justify your reasons is huge, both financially, but also for peace of mind. So, TLDR of all of this is ship small and ship often. Continuously rolling out software updates or new features is easy when you do it often and incremental. None of these big, massive eBay yellow to white changes. Redefining the way you think about speed and safety. They can coexist. They are not antonyms of each other. It's just finding the way to do it safely, that you can bridge speed and safety. And also, always measure your impact. Code matters when it's measured. Don't just push things into prod for jokes. See why you're doing it. What happens when that code is launched there, and what can you learn from it? So, if you want to release software more often, just make make releasing software less scary. If you are in an environment where you can fail and it's safe and nothing breaks, everyone has a good time. That's basically been my talk. I mean, I'm Munnawar Hashim. This is my second ever talk. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. That's me.